Louis Gottschalk by Coraline McGettrick. Where Louis was born. Gottschalk was born in New Orleans, Louisiana on May 8, 1829 to Edward and Amy Marie Bristol. He had many siblings and half-siblings. His family lived in a tiny cottage. He enjoyed much of the rich classical and popular music culture in his hometown. Catch-up. Louis later moved in with his relatives. His maternal grandmother, Bruce Lee, and his nurse, Sally, were both Saint Dominican Creoles. He was therefore exposed to a variety of musical traditions and started playing the piano at the age of 5. He was soon recognized by the New Orleans bourgeoisie and made his informational debut at the age of 11 at New St. Charles Hotel. Training. Only 2 years later, at the age of 13, Gottschalk left the U.S. and sailed to Europe, as he and his father realized a classical training was required to fulfill his musical ambitions. However, the Paris Conservatory originally rejected him without even hearing him on the grounds of his nationality. America is a country of steam engines. He eventually was trained in Paris, but important early compositions established him as a genuinely American composer, not a mere imitator of the European written tradition. Travels. After Gottschalk returned to the U.S. in 1853, he traveled extensively. A trip to Cuba in 1854 was a beginning of a series of trips to Central and South America. He also traveled to Puerto Rico after his Havana debut. He was quite taken with the music he heard on the island. He continued traveling extensively and spent significant time in Cuba, Puerto Rico, Guadeloupe, and Martinique. Chopin of the Creoles. By the 1860s, Gottschalk had established himself as the best-known pianist in the New World and was the first American pianist to achieve international recognition. His songs were a major artistic statement and carried a legacy of slave music in a romantic music context. And such, there were also precursors of jazz. They were the first examples of Louisiana Creole music in classical music culture. Music. Early work, Bambola, 1844 and 1845. Souvenir de Puerto Rico, 1858. 1852 through 1862. Personal life. Gottschalk is mainly thought of as a piano virtuoso, but he also did compose several orchestral and operatic works. Gottschalk never married and had no children. He spoke 5 different languages. Morte. During one of his compositions in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, November 24th, 1869, he collapsed from yellow fever. Just before his collapse, he had finished playing his romantic piece, Morte. Portuguese, death. Gottschalk never recovered from the collapse and died 3 weeks later at the age of 40, presumably from an overdose of quinine. After his compositions were destroyed after his death or lost.
Why did you choose it?
I chose Louis Gottschalk because I live in Florida. Not quite Cuba, but pretty close.